Patriots! And welcome to the Q Lounge Live. Hi, I'm your host, Shady Groove. This is the In the Matrix YouTube channel. It is just after 7 p.m. on the West Coast. It is 10 p.m. on the East Coast. It is Friday night in America and on Patriots worldwide. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Q Lounge Live. Anyone out there, if you are new to Q, please feel free to come in and join us and ask questions and be part of the movement, which is liberating the world from the global elite, the global system that enslaves you guys. That's what we're doing here every day of the week on the Matrix Groove Hour and here right now on the Q Lounge Live. And with me tonight, I have just for a few minutes here, I have at In the Matrix joining me, co-hosting with me. What a great honor it is to have him every day, bringing justice, my partner in justice, joining me right now. Matrix, how are you doing, brother? Are you all right out there?
Hey everybody, I'm doing good, Shady, man. I love that song. I love the intro, really bassy tonight. I love it. Just wanted to, say thank you guys for today. Carly Bonet on the show today was absolutely fantastic, and you guys stepped up in a big way. So I just want to thank you guys all for supporting Carly. As you know, sometimes our Patriots need a little bit of help. And I also want to say Angel Fly 2Q Rogue Angel 1. Her son is in the hospital again, heart patient, missed the Groove Hour, tried in the hospital, but Carly was on. She will watch later, but any prayers that you want to throw her way and to her kids, she would absolutely appreciate it. So prayers to you, Angel Flies 2Q, for your son. Absolutely. And with that, guys, I'm ready for some Shady. I'm actually feeling a little bit under the weather, so I'm going to kind of just turn it over to Mr. Groove, and I'm going to kind of sit back and hang with guys and chat for a little bit, Shady. So I can't wait.
All right, man. Well, you're going to be right there with me, and if I need anything from you, I know you're right there, guys. He's going to be hanging with us in the chat. We've got a lot of stuff to go over here. You guys that have been joining me on the Q Lounge, we missed last week, but we're back here this week. Just really excited to see what has been transpiring in our real world, everyone. I know that Q has been a little bit on the quiet side for the last couple of weeks, but that's okay, because what you are seeing coming out of the president and coming out of the White House and our system as it's being changed and maneuvered and moved around. I mean, this thing that just happened with President Trump and what he just announced yesterday with the tariffs on Mexico, this is amazing. This guy is taking amazing steps to highlight what you care about, what America cares about, what we care about as Anons and as people out there chasing the truth and wanting there to be accountability in our government. And a lot of people, I think, have forgotten within the last, 30 or 40 years or so, exactly what accountability in government looks like. We haven't seen, if you'll notice, you haven't seen very many people wearing ties going to prison. Now, before the 80s and 90s and the Bush Sr. and the Clintons, well, you saw a lot of that. And it happened quite often. And so Anons out there, I know, are getting anxious to start seeing some of these people that wear ties be held accountable. And I understand that. I get that. And I'm right there with all of you. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we're in a proper position to be taking on this system. This system is not only corrupt, we know that the system is corrupt and the bureaucracy is corrupt, but it's also embedded in our reality. It's embedded into our world. It is the architecture that is the blueprint underneath what we see every day whenever we walk out into our society. And I mean everything. And Matrix and I have made it our goal, our life's mission, whatever you want to call it, to bring red pill information to the world. And that is exactly what we're planning on doing, is to keep this momentum up. We are not going on and talking to people who have any ability to manipulate, right? Anons, that's why we're independent. We want to be able to say what we want to be able to say, and we want to be able to talk right to the structure. And the structure that we're talking to, we have been dissecting with you guys here on the lounge for the last couple of Q lounges. And since we have the Matrix Groove Hour to share with you some of the more in-depth decodes of the Q posts and stuff, I've decided for this time period here where we're waiting for the big information to come out, where we're waiting for the president to declass. Everybody, we're on the edge of our seats for the declass, and you know what that's going to reveal. That's going to reveal all of the players. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get everyone as up to speed as possible on who the players are, where they came from, where they're going, and what their motives and intentions are. And it really isn't very difficult to figure out all of this stuff if you know where to look. But as you know, as being understanding what's going on with Q, then you realize that finding the information isn't always as easy as you would hope. So anyone out there, I want to let you know that we got some of the best moderators on YouTube. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. They are there to hear your questions and to maybe provide you some sauce. And as we go through the different stuff that I'm talking about, they're going to be dropping you links that can give you the reference material to go back and look over some of this stuff, because what we're going to be doing is digging back into some old things, some things from a long time ago, some things that really helped me red pill my friends and red pill other people in this world, and I want to share them with you here. And we're referring to this as breaking the wheel. Now, breaking the wheel, and that reference, and what that reference means, obviously it's a little bit of a reference to Game of Thrones and what the wheel is a reference to. And the wheel is a reference to the system. The wheel is the reference to the chains that bind humanity, not just America, the chains that bind humanity. And those chains are large. And those chains have been lived in by humanity for a long time. And humanity is not very used to living without those chains. So freedom is something that is very sacred, especially to Americans. And sovereignty is something that's very sacred, especially to Americans. And Matrix made the point earlier on the Matrix Groove Hour that you have not really heard any presidents in the past, in the modern era, say the word sovereign or sovereignty. Why is that? And what does it mean? And what did it used to mean? Well, it used to mean that no one could take your rights away from you, including your property or your belongings, okay? But they kind of tricked us in the last 100 years to turn that on its head and to not really show you in your systems or in school or in university what it really means or what it really is. And what we've been trying to drive home the last few times on the Q Lounge Live is this idea that they are attempting to paint all of this stuff as something else. Everything is being painted as something it isn't. Everything is being painted as something it isn't. And most of it is anti-American. And most of it is right here under our noses, okay? It's right under our noses. And so one of the things that we're highlighting here is the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. We have to be able to understand what is your enemy. Identify your enemy. If you cannot identify the enemy, then you cannot identify who it is that is attacking you, all right? So with the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, you see here really unusual things like the abolition of private property and the application of all rents and land of public purposes, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax, abolition of all rights of inheritance, confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels, centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. An exclusive monopoly. Centralization of the means of communication and transportation in the hands of the state. Centralization of the means of communications and transportations in the hands of the state. These federal agencies that have been built up in the last 100 years are the gatekeepers for the communist agenda. That's what these agencies represent. All of them. FDA, FCC, Department of Education, all of them. 7, extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, bringing into the cultivation of the wastelands and the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. So look at what is happening. Look at how much of your food supply is coming from Mexico. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state. So they took over all of the instruments of production of the food supply and then what? Moved it to Mexico. They took over all of the extensions of your automobile industry and moved it where? To Mexico. And now you have the president highlighting that there's a $40 billion worth of trade with Mexico every year. Well, isn't that interesting? Do you guys realize that Mexico was not on our side in the war? That's interesting. And then 8, equal liability of all to labor, establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. All of these, EPA, FDA, FCC, all of these regulations, even the FAA, TSA, alphabet agency after alphabet agency, things that weren't granted power over you, things that intrude, and stomp on your sovereignty. Combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, the gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of population over the country. Free education for all children in public schools. Abolition of children's factory labor in the present form. Combination of education with the industrial production. The destruction of unions. Another thing. The people and politicians who believe in the socialistic and communistic concepts, especially those who pass more and more laws implementing these slavery ideas, are traitors to their oath of office and to the Constitution of the United States of America. Know your enemy. Remove the enemy from within, from among us. Now, you think about that, that all to me seems real simple. But in reality, it's very complicated for people to understand. And the reason for that is education. And the reason for that is you were not properly shown the important parts of your Constitution when you learned about it. The important parts of your Constitution are the parts that say no money shall ever be coined that is paper or that is not metal, gold and silver, backed by metal. Well, look at where we're at. That reality has to sink in for us. That reality is what Q and the president and all of the anons out there are focused on, are this reality. This was a long-term psyop on the American people to trick you and to steal your land and to send you into a city to live in an apartment as opposed to living on your farm and producing and being self-sufficient and being, quote, sovereign. That means your property as well as it means your human self. But if you don't have any property, then that becomes something completely different, doesn't it? Doesn't that become something completely different? How isn't it a lot harder to protect yourself in an apartment or an apartment complex than it would be on your land or your farm? So what happened to all those farms? What happened? Foreign interests. That's what happened. Huge amounts of foreign interests now control your agriculture, and these foreign interests are not American. They do not believe in your freedom of speech. They do not believe in your right to know what's in what you consume, and they do not believe in your right to defend yourself or any other of those rights that you deem sacred. Patriots, Anons, Americans. It's not something that you want to keep and cherish and hold to yourself. It's something that we want to spread and share with the rest of the world. But there's obstacles. There's obstacles in our way. And one of the obstacles in our way is no one can agree. No one can come to the conclusion that there really is no difference between socialism, communism, and Luciferianism. Because the people who believe in Luciferianism are the ones who are attempting to implement communism. Because their religion, it does not matter what you think, it doesn't matter what you believe, they have a religion. Their religion is destruction. Their religion is control. Their religion is the antithesis of freedom. Their religion is right here attempting to steal all of this from the most productive country ever assembled on the face of the earth. And they had tools to do it. They've been working on this for 100+ years, systematically every moment, to take this stuff away from you. And so whenever we talk about this, we talk about something that's very interesting. We talk about the Hegelian dialectic, the anti-human principle. Revolutionaries in government have created economic chaos, shortages in food and fuel, confiscated taxation, a crisis in education, the threat of war, and other diversions to condition Americans for the New World Order. The technique is as old as politics itself. It is the Hegelian dialectic of bringing about change in a 3-step process: thesis, antithesis, synthesis. The first step, thesis, is to create a problem. The second step, antithesis, is to generate opposition to the problem: fear, panic, hysteria. Third step, synthesis, is to offer the solution to the problem created by step 1. A change which would have been impossible to impose upon the people without the proper psychological conditioning achieved in stages 1 and 2. Applying the Hegelian dialectic as the irresistible financial influence, concealed change agents seek to dismantle social and political structures by which free men govern themselves. Ancient landmarks erected at great cost in blood and treasure. Their objective is to emasculate sovereign states, merge nations under universal government, centralize economic powers, and control the world, people, and resources. Soak that in for a second. If you're not familiar with that, I know a lot of Anons out there are familiar with that. But this is not conjecture. This is not speculation. This is the rule upon which your world is governed. It is manipulated, and it is in full force, and the momentum increased on this project extraordinarily fast after the organization of the central bank in America in 1913. After the Titanic was sank. After opposition to that idea went away. But there was interesting things that were in place during this time. Things that can be researched and understood from the perspective of that thesis. So here we're going to drop back to this. We've been reading a little bit from Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. So I'm going to read you a little bit about the economic model, and then the mods out there have this to drop to you guys, because this is a 45-page segment of this, made popular by William Cooper from Behold a Pale Horse. But I want to get into this because what this does is it gives you an overview so you can understand the blueprints and the structure, because a lot of people that are going to be coming to this conversation in the future are going to be talking to you about, oh, well, this, that, I can't see it. Well, right now, okay, we're going to show you a blueprint. We're going to show you the architecture. We're going to show you the plan, their plan. It was going to end with the annihilation of any remnant of liberty or freedom left on planet Earth. That's the goal, to eliminate that and to brainwash you into not wanting it as well at the same time, simultaneous. Economics as a social energy science has as a first objective the description of the complex way in which any given unit of resources is used to satisfy some economic want. This first objective, when it is extended to get the most product from the least or limited resources, comprises that objective of general military and industrial logistics known as operations research. See Simplex Methods of Linear Programming. The Harvard Economic Research Project of 1948 was an extension of World War II operations research. Its purpose was to discover the science of controlling an economy. At first, the American economy and then the world economy, it was felt that with sufficient mathematical foundation and data, it would be nearly as easy to predict and control the trend of an economy as to predict and control the trajectory of a projectile. Such has proven to be the case. Moreover, the economy has been transformed into a guided missile on target. The immediate aim of the Harvard project was to discover the economic structure, what forces change that structure, how the behavior of the structure can be predicted, and how it can be manipulated. What was needed was a well-organized knowledge of the mathematical structure and interrelationships of investment, production, distribution, and consumption. To make a short story of it all, it was discovered that an economy obeyed the same laws as electricity, and that all of the mathematical theory and practical and computer know-how developed for the electronic field could be directly applied to the study of economics. The discovery was not openly declared, and its more subtle implications were and are kept a closely guarded secret. For example, that in an economic model, human life is measured in dollars, and that the electric spark generated when opening a switch connected to an active inductor is mathematically analogous to the initiation of war. The greatest hurdle which theoretical economists faced was the accurate description of the household as an industry. This is a challenge because consumer purchases are a matter of choice, which in turn is influenced by income, price, and other economic factors. This hurdle was cleared in an indirect and statistically approximate way by an application of shock testing to determine the current characteristics called current technical coefficients of a household industry. Finally, because problems in theoretical electronics can be translated very easily into problems of theoretical electronics and solution translated back, again, it follows that only a book of language translation and concept definition needed to be written for economics. The remainder could be gotten from standard works on mathematics and electronics. This makes the publication of books on advanced economics unnecessary and greatly simplifies project security. So there you see, they're studying economics like electricity and making the overlay. How does it match up? And then here you see different things being calculated about industry and how industry makes something. One industry makes something but needs this, and makes this but needs that, but they need so much of this. How do you make it look like a circuit? Why would you want it to look like a circuit unless you were trying to control the energy? Is our energy, our collective energy in general, as humans and as the economy, being controlled? The three industrial classes. Industries fall into three categories or classes by type of output: capital, resources; goods, commodities or use or dissipative; services, actions of population. Industries exist at three levels: nature, sources of energy and raw materials; government, printing of currency equal to the gross national product and the extension of currency in the excess of the GNP; banking, loaning of money for interest and extension; inflation, counterfeiting economic value through deposit loan accounts. Class 2, industries exist as producers of tangible or consumer dissipated products. This sort of activity is usually recognized and labeled by the public as industry. 3, industries are those which have service rather than a tangible product as their output. These industries are called households, governments. Their output is human activity of a mechanical sort, and their basis is population. The whole economic system can be represented by a three-industry model if one allows the names of the outputs to be capital, goods, and services. Problem with the representation is that it would not show the influence, say, the textile industry on the ferrous metal industry. This is because both the textile industry and the metal industry would be contained within a single classification called the goods industry. So what you're seeing is the mock-up drawing out in the late mid 30s, 40s, after the war, to control your system, to control your government, to control your wealth and where it goes, and to make sure that they, quote unquote, they, the people in charge of the monopoly, okay, we're going to connect that here in a second, work together behind the scenes. And they also work like you would think of the WWE, where they cooperate on how they're going to fight in public. For decades. Decades. This is open source information. This is stuff that has been out there for a long time. Silent weapons for quiet wars. But this is an architecture. And this isn't all the architecture. This is just an example. It moves to many different areas. So here, right now, we're going to go from there into None Dare Call It Conspiracy. And we're going to read through this for a second. This would be starting on, where am I? I'm on page 16 in this that they'll drop the links to. That's where this is. Our founding fathers revolted against the near total government of the English monarchy, but they knew that having no government at all would lead to chaos, so they set up a constitutional republic with a very limited government. They knew that men prospered in freedom, although the free enterprise system is not mentioned specifically in the Constitution. It is the only one which can exist under a constitutional republic. I'll read that again. It is the only one which can exist under a constitutional republic. All collectivist systems require power in government, which the Constitution did not grant. Our founding fathers had no intention of allowing the government to become an instrument to steal the fruit of one man's labor and give it to another who had not earned it. A government was to be one of severely limited power. Jefferson said, in questions of power, then let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. Jefferson knew that if the government were not enslaved, people soon would be. And that's what we're trying to do as Anons and Q people, is to wake people up to recognize that you are not a servant to your government in America. The government and representatives alike are your servants. They represent you, not you are controlled by them. That's the big think mirror. That's the big flip that it took them 60 or 80 years to convince people of this, but now they have a whole generation of brainwashed people that are buying into this stuff. And they're letting them go to college and run up hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt to learn it. And then they're stuck because how are you stuck? Well, how are they stuck? Well, you spend your time in college being told that capitalism is terrible. You're spending your time in college being told that capitalism doesn't work and socialism is a better system, all the while accruing debt. So if you come out of school thinking the capitalist system is broken, then how are you going to use the capitalist system to get out of debt? Does that make logical sense at all? No. So look how they're using the universities, and who is funding all this? Who's funding it? You are. The government is. And the government is backing all the debt. Why would that be? Why would the bureaucratic tentacles of the government be so interested in making sure that everyone in America, where did it say? Free education. Well, you say, well, it's not free. They go in debt for it. Well, that's an even better scheme. They're making you pay to brainwash you. They're making your parents pay. Or making you as parents pay to brainwash your children. You foot the bill. We don't want to pay for it. Look at that. Can you think of a better scheme? It was Jefferson's view that government governs best, which governs least. Our forefathers established this country with the very least possible amount of government. Although they lived in an age before automobiles, electric lights, and televisions, they understood human nature and its relation to political systems far better than do most Americans today. Times change, technology changes, but principles are eternal. Primarily, government was to provide for national defense, to establish a court system, but we have burst the chains that Jefferson spoke of, and for many years now we have been moving leftward across the political spectrum toward collectivist total government, or not, it doesn't say this here, or what I would refer to as a nanny state. Every proposal by our political leaders, including some which are supposed to have the very opposite effect, such as Nixon's revenue sharing proposal, carries us further leftward to the centralized government. This is not because of socialism is inevitable. It is no more inevitable than Phariseeism. It's largely the result of clever planning, patient gradualism, or incrementalism. Same thing. A little piece at a time. A little piece, a little crumb today, a little crumb tomorrow, a little crumb the next day. Over the course of 10, 20 years, those crumbs add up. And those crumbs are adding up to your sovereignty being erased. Not from you having that sovereignty, but from you knowing what the power means, from you knowing how to use the power, from the mob out there telling you that you can't stand up against them. You're helpless. How many people say that? Especially people that talk about conspiracy stuff. How many people tell you that the government is all powerful and there's nothing that you can do about it and you better be quiet because if you say too much, somebody's going to... That's what they said about the people that fought that revolution. Since all communists and their insider bosses are waging a constant struggle for socialism, let us define the term. Socialism usually defined as a government ownership or control of the basic means of production, distribution of goods and services. When analyzed, this means government control over everything, including you. All controls are people controls. If the government controls these areas, it can eventually do exactly as Marx set out to do, to destroy the right to private property, eliminate the family, and wipe out religion. Bastardize it worldwide. We're being socialized in America, and everybody knows it. If we had a chance to sit down and have a cup of coffee with the man on the street that we have been interviewing, he might say, you know, one thing I can never figure out is why all these very, very wealthy people like the Kennedys, Fords, and Rockefellers and others are for socialism. Why are the super rich for socialism? Don't they have the most to lose? Take a look at my bank account, compare it with the Rockefellers, and it seems funny that I'm against socialism and he's out promoting it. Or is it funny? In reality, there's a vast difference between what the promoters define as socialism and what it is in the actual practice. The idea that socialism is a share the wealth program is strictly a confidence game and get the people to surrender their freedom to an all-power collective government. So while the insiders tell us we're building a paradise on earth, we're actually constructing a jail for ourselves. Doesn't it strike you as strange that some of the individuals pushing hardest for socialism have their own personal wealth protected in family trusts and tax-free foundations? Being like Rockefeller, Ford, Kennedy, a very socialist program known to man which will increase your taxes, yet they pay little. If anything, in taxes themselves, an article published by the North American newspaper in '67 tells how the Rockefellers pay practically no income taxes despite their vast wealth. Article reveals that one of the Rockefellers paid the grand total of $685 personal income tax, and that goes into giving some other examples. But that kind of gives you an idea or the point of reference. Our problem is that most of us believe socialism is what the socialists want us to believe it is and share the wealth program. That is a theory. But is that how it works? Let us examine the only socialist countries according to the socialist definition of the word extant in the world today, and they are communist countries. Communists themselves refer to those as socialist countries in the Union of the Soviet. See how this works? Confusion. Mass confusion. On all levels. You can't get a straight answer on this stuff from anyone. Why? Why is that? And what does it all really mean? Who are these people? Or what are these people? Here we step over to page 44 of the publications on the Tavistock shaping the decline of the USA. And we're going to read for just a second here from chapter 5, page 44. Do we have what H.G. Wells called an invisible government? As I have previously related, the modern science of making public opinion through advanced techniques of manipulating mass opinion began at one of the West's most advanced propaganda factories situated in Britain and at Wellington House. This facility, dedicated to social engineering and creating public opinion in the commencement of the World War I, was under the guise of Lord Rothermere and Northcliffe and the future director of the studies of the Royal Institute of International Affairs. As we discovered later, Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, fact carefully hidden from public view. Jointly, they centered work on techniques to mobilize support for World War I. Among the masses of people who were opposed to war with Germany, the public perception was that Germany was a friend of the British people, not an enemy, and the British people saw no need to fight Germany. After all, was it not true that Queen Victoria was the cousin of Wilhelm II? Bernays worked to persuade them that the war was necessary using the techniques of new science through new arts and mass manipulation via the communications media for its propaganda purposes, tinged with willingness to lie, which was just getting into its stride, having learned a great deal of experience during the Anglo-Boer War, 1899 to 1902. So they have propaganda and your media immersed in the turn of the century. Now, I would like to argue that without the events of Jekyll Island and without the events of the Titanic, you would have had no war. There would have been a World War I. There wouldn't have been a World War II. And there wouldn't have been Hitler. There wouldn't have been all of this manipulation that's gone on since, all of the way that they've moved people around the planet since then. Society is engineered, guys. It's engineered methodically. It isn't happenstance. And the people behind the curtain have belief structures that they implement. And it isn't what you think. It isn't how you think in your belief structure. It is very, very different. They believe in sabotage. They believe in destruction. They believe in slavery. They believe in anything they can use to control you as sheep. You're sheep to them. You have been sheep to them for centuries. Centuries. This is a game that's been going on a long, long time. And they perfected it over the last 100 years because of the productivity that manifested here in America once the chains of globalism or the global monarchical control were released. And that release didn't really last long. Honestly, it didn't last long. Within 100 years, they had infiltrated, manipulated, gotten their grip, and killed Lincoln because Lincoln went against what they were saying. And you saw, you go back before that to what Andrew Jackson did. That's why President Trump has Andrew Jackson hanging up in the White House. Because it's very important to know who they were so that we can know who we are. We're not going to know who and where we are until we wake up enough people. How the Illuminati, Luciferian Satanists infiltrated religion, secret societies, and government and hijacked them from within. 1784, Adam Weishaupt, Jesuit trained professor of canon law, defected from Christianity and embraced the Luciferian ideology while teaching. In 1770, the moneylenders who had recently organized the House of Rothschild retained him to revise and modernize the age-old protocols designed to give the synagogue of Satan ultimate world domination so they can impose the Luciferian ideology upon what remains of the human race after the final social cataclysm by use of the satanic despotism. Weishaupt, under the direction of Amschel Rothschild, Knight of Malta, completed the task May 1, 1776. Plan required the destruction of all existing governments and religion. The objective was to be reached by dividing the masses, whom he termed Goyim, meaning them human cattle. All of the global elite refer to you as this. All of the global elite aspire to this belief structure. Weishaupt organized the Illuminati and put the plot into the execution. The word Illuminati derived from Lucifer, means holders of the light. This moved into all systems a long time ago, and they changed history. They changed history. They rewrote huge swaths of history. I'm telling you, the stuff that we are uncovering now after digging back into this is amazing whenever you really go back and look at it. But you're talking about what they believe and who believes what and who they are and how do we find them and what do they think. I'll tell you how you find them. The people that believe in socialism and communism are of Luciferian thought forms, because communism and socialism are destructive. I like to say socialism is communism for dummies. It's not any different. Someone other than you controls your wealth. Simple as that. Simple, simple. You saw what we said. No other system can function in a constitutional republic other than a capitalist system. But you have hundreds of thousands, millions of kids being taught every day that there is an issue with capitalism. Why? Because these people usurped capitalism, made it appear to you, by the way you learned things in school, that you were still living in capitalism, and then made you point and look at things like, oh, what happened to the Indian nation in America, and then you point to capitalism as being the problem with that. But that's not what I point to. I point to these people right here. These people use the arm of the government to destroy the Native American communities from sea to shining sea in the 1800s during the Civil War. They created the Civil War for division, for destruction, all of folly. The Civil War was being fought to weaken you for the implementation of the future central bank, and it worked. Now Anons and Q and Protus are here trying to strengthen you to recognize what it is that happened and how in the world are we going to get out of this? Because the only conversation I'm interested in having is how in the world are we going to come together and get up out of this? So I'm going to drop back here and I'm going to read a couple of Q posts, guys, that I've got pulled up here. I think they're up just a little from where I'm at. But Q refers to the old guard. You are watching the systematic destruction of the old guard. Power will return to the people. What happens when you are a threat to the mainstream media? The old guard. Coincidence? Threats and scare tactics deployed. Fear not. And this one here. With the meme of the media and all of the newspapers that supported Hillary and all the newspapers that did not support the current president. Do you believe actual polls were conducted? Pre-election polls, HRC favored 90 to 98%. Reconcile against the results. Why is there emphasis put on polls? Define human nature. The general psychological characteristics, feelings, and behavior traits of humankind regarded as shared by all humans. Point 1, fake news logic. If people believe the odds are hopeless, their candidate will win, do they still make the effort to vote? Point 2. If people believe the odds are overwhelming that their candidate will win, do they still make the effort to vote? Does 1 cancel 2? Point 3. Fake news logic. If people believe the majority of people feel a certain way about something, do they go with the majority to feel accepted? If the majority of people believe something doesn't apply as must be right, does this give rise to we are the majority mindset? Define echo chamber. A metaphysical description of a situation in which beliefs are amplified or reinforced by communication and repetition inside a closed system. Prior to new platforms, networks connecting people, did the old guard have full control? Did the old guard learn from this mistake, 2016 election, and now tasking all new platforms, networks to censor? When you are awake, you can see clearly Q. That post was 8/31/2018. And there are a couple of other posts that talk about the old guard. Dems playbook, midterms, we will impeach Justice K. Zero corroborating evidence of all factual witnesses provided by accuser, all denied allegations. Should we take control of, in November, liberal left lunacy bait. These people are evil, sick, and stupid. You're witnessing the systematic destruction of the old guard. Old guard, power to the people. Red October Q. What are we talking about? Old guard. Are we not talking about this? Are we not talking about this? Are we talking about this? Are we talking about this? The old guard. represents what Q is, and you and Anons and us are attempting to take apart. That is the system of chains, the wheel of chains that controls you. Systems upon systems upon systems upon systems within systems. And anyone looking at it with a fresh face can hardly see any of the minutia there because it is so complicated. And that's part of the plan. People tried to warn us and people tried to tell us things. And if you'll notice, I'm going to go through a couple of those right here. And you'll notice within hearing some of this, how the narrative may have you a little bit.
Keep in mind, I think we should keep in mind when we refer to Democrats, when we refer to the administration, that there are definitely two groups of Democrats as of today. Number one, there are the millions of loyal Americans who have voted the Democrat ticket. Individuals who are just as loyal, who hate communism just as much, and love America just as much as the average Republican. That's one group. On the other hand, there is that small, closely knit group of administration Democrats who are now the complete prisoners under the complete domination of the bureaucratic, communistic Frankenstein which they themselves have created. Ladies and gentlemen, they shouldn't be called that administration Democrat Party. To call them Democrats is an insult to the millions of loyal American Democrats. They shouldn't be called Democrats. They should be referred to properly as the Commie Crap Party.
Well, now, isn't that interesting? Anyone find that interesting like I did? Boy, you sure have heard a lot of fake news about McCarthy, haven't you? And what he was doing and what was really going on? It was quite a while ago, and then your mainstream news media...
A part of that plan, of course...
is pretty convinced that McCarthy was off the rails. Let's listen to this from Robert Welch, 1958.
A part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of American sovereignty, piece by piece and step by step, to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example. Now, here are the aims for the United States. 1. Greatly expanded government spending for every conceivable means of getting rid of ever larger sums of American money as wastefully as possible. 2. Higher and then much higher taxes. 3. An increasingly unbalanced budget despite the higher taxes. 4. Wild inflation of our currency. 5. Government controls of prices, wages, and materials, supposedly to combat inflation. 6. Greatly increased socialistic controls over every operation of our economy and every activity of our daily lives. This is to be accompanied, naturally and automatically, by a correspondingly huge increase in the size of our bureaucracy and in both the cost and reach of our domestic government. 7. Far more centralization of power in Washington and the practical elimination of our state lines. There is a many-faceted drive at work to have our state lines eventually mean no more within the nation than our county lines do now within the states. 8. The steady advance of federal aid to and control over our educational system, leading to complete federalization of our public education. 9. A constant hammering into the American consciousness of the horror of modern warfare, the beauties and the absolute necessity of peace. Peace always on communist terms, of course. And 10, the consequent willingness of the American people to allow the steps of appeasement by our government which amount to a piecemeal surrender of the rest of the free world.
A piecemeal surrender of the rest of the free world. Any of that he just spoke ring true? People tried to tell us. Countless people tried to tell us. And they were laughed at, ostracized, attacked, pushed aside. Exactly like what they are doing to the President of the United States today. Up until this president was elected, they would tell you that any president can pretty much do anything. They did executive order after executive order, orders that could, within the flash of an eye, take over all communications, take over all systems, anything that they wanted to do, after, especially after the Patriot Act. Huh. Isn't that interesting that any president could do anything unilaterally, pretty much, until Donald Trump was elected president? And then what? And then the president can't do anything unilaterally. Courts, judges, cities, municipalities, parties, his own party, all attempting to stymie him. Same way they attempted to stymie McCarthy, that they did. The same way they attempted to silence Robert Welch and John Kennedy. Many, many others. And I know that a lot of you guys stay out there, you understand Q, and Q has brought a lot of you to this conversation, but I want to let you know that I think you can tell from a lot of the stuff that I'm looking at here. I've been on this wall for a little while. I've been chasing these people for quite a while. And the information that I've gathered throughout my life to help me show other people what the truth is applies perfectly to what we're doing here with Q, because Q is pointing us to the truth. The truth. The truth of the control. The truth of the system of control that enslaves mankind. And we can point back to things like this right here that I just showed you this video. The video of McCarthy. I can show you more. And what these people were saying about what was going on in Hollywood in the 50s. But then what? You have all of Hollywood and all of the media agreeing that Joseph McCarthy, and this is what? Isn't real. It's fake. He's making it up. He's over amplifying something that doesn't really have. We don't have a problem. Well, I say we have a problem. And the problem we have is is that Americans think communism is in Russia. Let me tell you something. Your communism ain't in Russia. Your communism is right under your nose. Every time you walk into the store, every time you turn on the TV, every time you pick up your phone, every time you order from Amazon, every time you eat something that Monsanto grew. That's where your communism is. Because what you see there, the systems of destruction within the planks of communism have overtaken and given all your systems to a monopoly of control that exists within a trust. Here you go. QAnon says, save the best for last, P. One thing we know is not Pope. Could it be Pesur? This is what the hubbub is about. Pesur. And that name and what it means. And if you are curious and don't understand why Matrix and I are under relentless attack no matter which direction we turn, this is why. Because this organization is the trust, the Pesur Trust, the massive monopoly that we were talking about right here. The monopoly that holds everything. Americans call it the Federal Reserve, which is privately owned credit system. So you don't do anything with money without that Federal Reserve, do you? Every note you pick up, look at one, show me one. Show me a note that you carry around in your pocket that tells you can take that and exchange it for gold. Because I can show you notes going back to before 1940, 1930. How come they only let you carry $100 around at a time in one note? Think about that. You're too stupid to be able to protect yourself, protect your wealth, know what to do with it. You're too stupid to own gold? Huh. Because that's where your wealth is. That's where all our wealth is. In the trust. The guardians. Old guard guys. Who are we chasing? We are chasing the communists. And we are not chasing the communists in Moscow. There's a lot more communists right here than there is over there. And they have last names like Schiff. That's right. Jacob Schiff, original of Jekyll Island. Adam Schiff is a controller in your Congress. That is why Q has pointed to him so often. The family Pessoa Trust organized everything under the guise of this monopoly, a one monopoly, under the Federal Reserve as a centralized banking system. So the Federal Reserve owns all instruments. Instrument. That is your birth certificate. Instrument. That is your mortgage, your house deed. Instrument. That is your car title. Instrument. We have to start having a real conversation. We have to recognize the instrument control going back to the Pessoa Trust. The monarch. Where is it? Where is it? So within this research, we uncover that the Vatican sold, the church sold themselves to the Pessoa Trust in like 1870 something. And the Pessoa Trust is the moral compass that is calling themselves the Catholic Church. And I'd like to draw your attention for a moment to who are the guards at the Vatican. Who guards the Vatican? Unfortunately, tonight I'm not running the feed, so I can't see you guys in chat, but who guards the Vatican? Is it the Romans that have guards there? No. It is the Swiss. The Swiss. The Swiss guard the Vatican. What are you talking? What's wrong with Switzerland? What's wrong with Switzerland? A neutral country. Oh, yeah? What does a neutral country mean? What does it really mean? What are we really talking about? Where do people say to put your money where nobody can touch it? It sure isn't Belgium or London, Europe. Switzerland. Bank of International Settlements is the Federal Reserve. Same. And they're protecting the monopoly. And the reason that they are a sovereign country is because if you notice in things, banking, well, the bankers don't really like to destroy their area. So there's also other things there like the Red Cross. Yeah, that's right. The Red Cross in Switzerland. What does the Red Cross trade in, guys? There's a level of logic that we have to really start using with this, and we have to start understanding the difference between people. At the beginning of the show, I have a meme there that says, I'm trying to tell all Americans, I'm trying to tell you to stop being afraid of other Americans. That's the point I'm trying to make with all of this. Anyone that you meet in your real life that believes in sovereignty and freedom and love and light are not communists. Anyone that you meet in your life that believes in vitriol, spewing hatred, being mean, division, unfair arguing, untruthful reflection, all of those things are systems that have been implemented onto you and projected onto you, and you've taken up yourself. They've taken it up themselves. If there was any other point to the Q movement, it was to highlight this, and it was to show you that you are powerful. We are going to end this. End it. We're not going to stop the wheel. We're going to break the wheel. And to break the wheel, that means that we need to be free, independently free to think on our own and to be entrepreneurs on our own and to provide a sovereign space for the safety, the security, and the wealth of our families. That's what used to be the utmost important thing. But now the most important thing is football and beer. So 100 years ago, you had a nation where the most important thing was your family and your land and your wealth. And today, the most important thing is how you entertain yourself. Entertainment 100 years ago was a luxury to go to a show or to do something fun. There's a ton of stuff that's going on in the news. And then we're going to dive right into some of this, but that is a presentation to let you know, to let you see this architecture and this structure. This is going to be, you have no idea how many people are going to be asking you about this stuff 6 months from now, because it's all going to come out. The D-class doesn't just have to do with Mueller. Transparency has to do with unnecessarily classified information that your government has kept you from knowing because it implicates them in crimes that they are accusing other people of. Holier than thou types. Big, big, big. And all of y'all are really impressive. It's impressive to have witnessed what has happened in a year. It's impressive to see what you can do with information worldwide once it gets on the web and starts to move, and how fast it moves and ends up coming back around to each of us. But our overarching message is to orient ourselves on the game board. You cannot properly play chess unless you properly understand which pieces are the white pieces and which pieces are the black pieces and which pieces can move which way and which pieces can't. And that is the confusion that has left us in this situation. You would not have pulled this on the general population 100 years ago. Why? Because everyone had gold. No one struggled. It wasn't lives in poverty until after the Depression, after they stole everything, after they told you could no longer own gold. 20 years after they implemented a central bank, your constitution to them meant nothing, right? It meant nothing. And it still means nothing to this day. To people like Adam Schiff, Maxine Waters, Jerry Nadler, Nancy Pelosi, or the past administration, or anyone on that chart that's in media, all the people that you saw in media that we looked at in the Q post right here. Look at this. Does that not speak volumes? Old guard permeates from the controlled aspects that organize as a religion from Rome and claim that they are a moral compass for humanity, derive their powers from owning the monopoly. That's where their power comes from. And that's the power they wield over you at incessant volume, with unprecedented relentlessness, day after day after day for over a century. All for what? Why are you so important? I'll tell you why you're important. Because you innately believe in freedom. And there's something about our DNA here that prevents this from occurring fully, and they can't stand it. And now what you're seeing is panic of them losing complete control of the narrative. If they lose complete control of this narrative, which it seems like they have, the president and his Twitter account have disrupted their narrative in a monstrous way, guys. And that is where we're pointing to, and that is what we're saying about this. I want to read this right here, guys. If you guys will drop this to them, there's a chance that this link here won't go out there because some platforms don't like some of this information. This is actually from a piece called Operation Vampire Killer that came out in the early mid-90s. Joseph Stalin stated that after communism succeeds, then there will come a peace across the earth. Karl Marx said the meaning of peace is the absence of opposition to socialism. The Lord God said that they have seduced my people, saying peace, and there was no peace. Ezekiel 13:10. St. Paul said, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, a travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Ephesians 5:3. We should note that the globalists' main tactic and motivation to entice the world's people of their United Nations trap is ultimate peace and safety. The Founding Fathers' recipe for government, successful government. This affords a good chance to show the contrast between the kind of government our great leaders of the past gave us as a nation and the immoral cesspool that is in place today. Using the memorable quotes that follow, compare, and see if you can figure out why today our government, our families, and individual lives by the millions are falling apart. James Madison. We have staked the whole future of American civilization not upon the power of government, far from it. We have staked the future upon the capacity of each and all of us to govern ourselves, to sustain ourselves according to the Ten Commandments of God. Question, do we still govern and sustain ourselves by the Ten Commandments today? John Adams, our Constitution was made only for a religious and moral people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. Are Americans still a religious and moral people? Benjamin Franklin, man will ultimately be governed by God or by tyrants. Which is it governing us today? Andrew Jackson, the Bible is the rock on which our republic rests. Two questions. When in the last time you have heard a public official honestly and accurately call America a republic? And the other hand, can a democracy rest on the Bible? So the idea here is honest people functioning in an honest way, in an honest system that can make an honest living, don't become dishonest, distrustful, and criminal. But in a system where they can't compete and it's against them and every single thing they try to do in life is attacking them and coming at them from all angles, a lot of the times they have no choice. They want to survive. Humanity, humans want to survive. The difference isn't the people in America. The difference is the structure upon which we are now governed and the power upon which we now just willy-nilly hand back over to them. When we're talking about the Red Cross, if you guys have read anything about, if you've read the Q Post, you know about the Red Cross. You know what they're doing with the Red Cross. This is very interesting. The Thompson-Grassley reintroduces America, May 21st, 2019. Thompson, chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, and U.S. Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa today introduced legislation to give the congressional watchdog arm complete access to American Red Cross records for oversight purposes. Good. The Red Cross has been a component of disaster response for decades, but that does not put them above congressional oversight. The public should know how the Red Cross spends their taxpayer dollars. We know they are corrupt. We know they steal everything. We know what they're doing with the blood. We know 1 + 1 is 2. And we're here every day to talk about it. Because no one else is doing it. No one else that I've seen on the internet will sit down and bring you this information. Why? Seems simple. Seems easy to understand to me. It's easy for me to red pill people with this information when they see it. But no one else is talking about it. Isn't that interesting? With all of this momentum and all of the stuff with Q pointing right to this stuff, wow, it's so many other things seem to be what we're talking about, don't they? Next recent news story that nobody talks about. Crack pipe IDs and badge found in Hunter Biden's rental car. Huh? Well, that sure didn't make the 6 o'clock news. 2 D.C. driver's licenses, multiple credit cards, the Delaware Attorney General badge, the U.S. Secret Service business card belonging to Hunter Biden were found in a rental car returned to the Arizona. Huh. Probably wasn't his, though, right? Running for president. Son. Uranium One. Ukraine. Big trouble. On the horizon, right there. I know they say that Biden is the front runner, but trust me, that is not going to last very long. Here is, guys, if you will drop this to them, I want to share this with you because you guys out there on Twitter and YouTube now, and everybody, there's no telling what's going on out there with the YouTube chat, but earlier moderators weren't even able to post in there at different times. So they are censoring us and reducing our views and knocking people off the stream, making the stream buffer, all different kinds of stuff. This is the president's call. Social media platforms should advance freedom of speech. Too many Americans have seen their accounts suspended, banned, fraudulently reported for unclear. I'm going to bring this up at every show. I want you guys to know this. I want you guys to make your voices heard again here in America. Loretta Lynch facing 25 years for FISA fraud. And this was out a couple weeks ago. Still nobody really talking about this. But look at the Obama official facing the longest prison stretch of anyone, 25 years. 5 years for each case of FISA fraud. James Comey next in line. This just astounds me at the things that they can easily avoid talking about. This is something that most everyone, I think all you guys saw, but Yahweh lost immediate access to Android and Google. And they are scrambling. And they're scrambling everywhere in China to understand how they're going to function. They thought they were going to catch us. There's no way they can catch us. Now that we're playing by the rules and the president is bringing jobs, you know what this is going to do in Mexico with the tariffs. If they keep letting people come through Mexico and come here, the tariffs are going to escalate. All these people are going to move their companies back here because it's not going to be valuable. Same thing with China. It's not valuable to ship it out. These countries, we have the best place on the planet for corporate manufacturing now. We are idolized. Whereas a few years ago, we were demonized because you couldn't make a profit here. So isn't that interesting how you can, behind the scenes, run up the corporate tax rate on companies, force the companies to go to Mexico, start producing stuff and sending the same amount of stuff here, but they're producing it for a third, maybe even less the amount, and selling it here for the same price. Well, you would think the price would go down. No, didn't work like that. News in Michael Flynn's case. This was a couple of weeks ago as well. There's some new breaking stuff that's kind of going on with this judge and Michael Flynn. It looks like some things are maybe happening. I don't want to speculate on exactly what it is, but I would like to say to General Flynn and his family and Joseph Flynn. Joe, thank you for coming on the Matrix Groove Hour last Monday or Monday before last. That was really amazing to have you on there, to hear you talk about General Flynn, and the stories that you shared was just incredible. But keep General Flynn in your prayers, please, because this man is the reason you're here. He's the reason all of us are here. It's interesting, too. I noticed that this was an article that I logged in. I wanted to just show you the headline, but the article's now gone. FBI, fired FBI official authorized perjury investigation against Sessions. I mean, it's not coming down to a lot of stuff here, but it's coming down to the truth. Here's some blast for the past. Maybe, let's see if the mods can get this to drop in there. I bet you can't. The Clinton Chronicles. This is going to be relevant soon, too. You know, this is information I was reading in the early 90s, ladies and gentlemen. Countless state troopers lost their lives to this atrocious run of political theater. All to keep you a sheep. And this is great news. Look at this. This is something Matrix and I have been talking about as well. A rate cut 2019. The markets say yes, but the Fed says no. Why does the Fed say no? Because if they were to cut rates right now, every piece of a percentage point they cut in the interest rates right now is going to equate to a better economy. Like 1 + 1 is 2. They don't want to do it, but they're being forced to do it because they cannot justify raising them. Why? Because of what the economy is doing. You saw the sell-off today and a little bit more this week, but what you're seeing is this build-up in the sell-off and build-up in the sell-off. They're removing the power from Facebook and from Google and from Mexico and China. That's where a lot of the power is. So, interesting. Pointing at the Fed. Fed. We need to talk about the Fed. Here you go. Another one you don't see very much. Mr. Trudeau connected to Nexium. And this was something that I meant to share a couple of weeks ago, but I didn't get around to it. But I wanted to throw this up to you guys so you can see it. This case that's going on right now is the most unbelievable thing you can imagine, and the media will not touch it. Because all the people that are involved in this are the same deep state actors that are currently mostly running for president. I mean, there's a bunch of them currently running for president who are involved in all of this, including Senator Gillibrand, Anthony Weiner, other people like that are all over this stuff. There's lots and lots of stories out there. We haven't even begun to cover what's going on with that. And this week, this was interesting as well. Julian Assange is hit with 17 new charges under the Espionage Act. I thought the number 17 was very interesting, but also we were getting reports that his health may be deteriorating there. I'm not sure if those can be considered accurate or not. They did come out of WikiLeaks. We have become suspect of the accuracy of what WikiLeaks is bringing, but that was reported this week. And this, I want to get into one of this, one of the final things we're going to dig. Like, man, all of a sudden, there's aliens. I mean, this is really fascinating to see how much different stuff is coming out on aliens and how many news stories are covering this deep state narrative of disclosure. Now, I personally do think and believe that there are other worldly beings. Don't know that from specifically firsthand experience, but I think Q gave us a pretty resounding yes in his answer, as well as a lot of the evidence that Anons and most of us know from doing our research. But all of a sudden, aliens are important in the mainstream news, and we're seeing a push on this information in a very, what I would consider side-handed way that doesn't make a lot of sense. So this was the next thing I wanted to jump in on Assange. Yeah, right. Let's you guys think we're building a wall? Let's see. Some 45s out there, even though I can't see them for that, man, because that is 45. That is Anons winning. That is projecting strength. That is building a wall, guys. We are building this wall, and we are enforcing our immigration status for the future. We are not going to be overrun. You are not going to send a tremendous amount of people in here. They don't know hide their hair about their laws. They don't know how to load a gun, much less, or what a gun is, much less how to load one, and they're scared of firearms. Americans aren't scared of firearms. Americans aren't scared of firearms, and you shouldn't be. And if you are scared of firearms, then you have a disadvantage in your reality to protecting yourself against anything that attempts to harm you. Your right to own a firearm is your right to protect yourself, your family, and your property from anyone attempting to usurp that right, whether it is a government or whether it is a criminal. Says it pretty clearly in the Constitution. I like seeing that wall being built. I like knowing that wall is being built. Because you know what that does? Every section that goes up puts another nail in the coffin of this corrupt, communist, saboteur, Luciferian, whatever you want to call it, control banking mechanism that has been levied against the human spirit for well over a century, and it was done so on the backs of you, America. They did it in your name. That's how they tried to besmirch you. That's how they tried to use society to hate you. That's what they were doing. That was what the point was for invading Iraq. The idea that we invaded Iraq after 9/11. Think about that. It makes no logical sense. But whenever you think about it in this context, it kind of lines right up. Other news that no one's talking about. Climate change expert sentenced to prison for fraud. EPA's highest paid employee, leading expert on climate change, was sentenced to 32 months in federal prison Wednesday for lying to his bosses and saying he was an CIA spy working in Pakistan so he could avoid doing his real job. EPA, ABC Alphabet Agency. Beale said he was ashamed of his lies about working for the CIA ruse that, according to court records, began in 2000. Can't believe anything about any of this other than the idea that they got him. I'm not a CIA. I was pretending to be a CIA. Can't believe a word of these people. Reuters, the U.S. banking system flush with cash, but may have a problem. Boogeyman. Yeah, the Federal Reserve's got a problem, but it's not the problem that they're highlighting in this article. The problem is they're obsolete. As soon as you wake up out there, guys, the Federal Reserve will become obsolete because any normal thinking American can discern the idea that why in the world do we pay a third-party system to print money for us when we're finally capable of printing money for ourselves and then charge us an interest on even using the money? You're not paying for roads and bridges, guys. You're paying interest to the Federal Reserve on the debt. People confused. Interest. You don't even pay the interest every year on this debt. Calls growing to prosecute John Brennan after existence of clandestine CIA asset at the top level of Russian government is leaked. May 27. Former Obama CIA Director Brennan continued his public meltdown on Friday. Yeah, he sure did. President tweeted this meme right here. And John Brennan responded, "Young people everywhere, please do not emulate Mr. Trump's very immature behavior. Find others of honesty, integrity, and decency to be your role models, and always try to do what you know is the right thing, even when doing what is right is both unpopular and difficult." What he's trying to say there is, don't be yourself. Don't act as yourself. Don't allow yourself to be yourself in front of the people. Don't emulate calling out the deep state. Don't stand up like what Mr. Trump is doing and say that we're frauds. Please, my livelihood's at stake. We learned this week that this guy's security clearance wasn't actually revoked. What? Well, yeah, the president revoked the guy's security clearance, but then they didn't do it. Huh? Is that the world we're living in? Where's your voice, Anons? Where's your voice, Patriots? Time is now. And these people are leading the charge. Devin Nunes, Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, man, these guys are speaking up. Devin Nunes gives Trump's list of questions to ask Theresa May about the Steele dossier. And I think the president is going over there soon, right in this transition time. And Theresa May, trouble, Nigel Farage. This week was incredible in Europe, everyone. For all of my lovely Anon friends out there worldwide who are in Europe who saw this sweeping debunking of globalism. Wow. Pretty soon the Bilderberg meeting is going to be a place where we can just seal it up and go ahead and put them all in cuffs, because that's where they gather. And people like me saying stuff like this is very dangerous because they don't like it. But right here it is. Report said leaders of M5 and M6 United Kingdom intelligence agencies were briefed. But here we go. Right here. Foreign intelligence agencies, Five Eyes intelligence operatives were used to spy on you, still probably have all the tools that are spying on you from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Europe, or Britain. Five Eyes. You got some splaining to do, rest of the world. Americans are not going to be very excited whenever they learn this. And we're planning on telling them, just to let you know. We're planning on telling them. You saw that Mueller came out and then quickly started backtracking after his... Okay. Oh my gosh. This will give you a hemorrhage. This guy came out and said that we couldn't find that he's not guilty. Excuse me? Excuse me? So you're saying that the President of the United States is not innocent until proven guilty? Is that what you're saying? So you operate off of that basis that the person who was elected as the President of the United States isn't innocent until proven guilty. Are any of you listening to my voice innocent until proven guilty? Reconcile. The top heads in all these departments, Department of State, the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, cooperated. Chuck Schumer sat there before the president swore in and said, the intelligence agencies have 6 ways to Sunday of getting at you. He said this on Maddow. If you don't do what they want. Well, this president did not do what they wanted. And they spent their 6 ways. And let me tell you something. You got a president that's getting ready to spend 6 of his. And he might spend a few more than that. Because I don't see that he feels like any of these people deserve mercy. This is a big story. This whole thing is a big story. And believe it or not, the reality of the situation unfolding now with Mueller and everything is going to connect us straight to the deep state, is going to connect us straight to the old guard, is going to connect us to the entities behind the curtain. They will be exposed. And also, for all of the people out there who think this is too much, or you can't handle it, or you know better than others, if it's too hot for you, get out of the kitchen. Because this goes all the way to the top. And this doesn't stop. This doesn't stop with D-Class. I'm not stopping until I red pill every single person that I can possibly ever speak to. Because I have been red pilling people of all different kinds of faiths and religions and affiliations and countries my whole life. No one asking questions can't swallow a red pill. Doesn't matter who you are, if you can communicate. And the truth of the matter is, we used to live in a society on this world where we could all communicate freely. And then something inserted itself and made it to where we started using words instead of communicating with symbols and telepathy. That's the way we are designed. But we have been programmed. My job is, as a person who has opened themselves up from the pod, okay? If I'm in the Matrix and I've opened myself up from the pod and I'm standing there on the wall and all I see is all these other pods, I'm not going to stop breaking the next pod because of a bumper sticker on it that labels that human anything. Humans exist in freedom. That is our natural habitat. That is how we are abundant. That is the only way humanity can be abundant, is if we are left to our own decision making. I love this country. And I love all of you. And I love this president. And I never thought I would ever say that I loved the American president, but I do. And the reason that I sit here every day is because of him. And it isn't because of anything else. One of the last stories I want to dive into real quick, because it does have a little bit of an overarching point, is CBD and hemp in America. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about American hemp. If you're not aware of what American hemp is, go research. If you have farmland and you want to know what you can do to make a productive living, think hemp. Hemp is not like bamboo. Hemp is like bamboo in some species, but there's also hemp as the CBD, the flower that looks just like cannabis, but contains between 10-15% CBD. And it is being manufactured this year on a scale that Big Pharma is freaking out about. Why? Because Big Pharma goes under when CBD and THC remedies become available on the mass scale. What did they do to your wealth? How did they get your wealth? How did they get your wealth? I would argue a big part of it has to do with hemp. Maybe let's take just a second. Let's take a second. Let's overarchingly look at some history here. What do we have? Okay, we have America built off of hemp. Every ship sail, the Constitution is written on it. Every production means you could pay your taxes in hemp all the way up until when the global banking system was implemented. The global banking system becomes implemented, and then all of a sudden, things to do with hemp start going away. And then we have two massive wars. Okay, and then we have this immense oil refining that going on in America, all of this oil, all of it being made for the war effort. Okay, so we're creating a war out of nothing with global bankers over there, and then we're taking all the oil, building up the production levels, and we're sending it all overseas. No one has any here, and then the war ends, and then what? What do you do with all that oil? Well, Americans aren't consuming it. It's sitting around. What are you going to do with it? Huh. Well, we got to think about something, boss. What do you think we should do? Well, let's start getting rid of hemp, and let's start using oil. Let's start making petroleum-based fertilizers. Let's start using all the byproducts on the food. Let's start making plastics. From the onset, we could have made every single piece of plastic on planet Earth that's ever been made out of hemp. They had the technology then. You got the technology now. But no. That would have created a clean world. The cabal doesn't want a clean world. If you think the cabal wants to fix climate change or clean up the oceans, you're off your rocker. It is slush fund after slush fund after slush fund after slush fund. Nothing gets done unless we as humanity do it. But we can't do it as a humanity with nothing to work with. So that's why your president is fighting so hard against the Federal Reserve. And that's why Q was absolutely necessary to bring this conversation that we're having here right now to you, to us, to the future of us. It's us. It's all of us. And it affects all of us. It affects the wealth of all of your families, of all of your ancestors, of everything that they built. Look around at who is in the city that doesn't have a farm anymore. Look at the homelessness in San Francisco or the West Coast in general, mostly Democratic held jurisdictions, yeah. The vast majority of Americans love America, but there is a segment of Americans out there who are really, really brainwashed, and those people are going to need assistance. And those people are going to, and then there's a layer of people that are going to need you to leave them alone. It's just that simple. People that aspire to division, people that aspire to destruction, people that aspire to tearing things up, I'm leaving them behind. I'm building something. I'm a builder. I built houses for 20 years. I'm a builder. I build things. And that's what we've been doing here. That's what Matrix and I have been doing, been building something with a stern, solid foundation. That is the words of Q, POTUS, and you great Anons. That's who we are a steward of. I'm a steward of the truth. I'm a steward of liberty. And I'm a steward of humanity. And that's what we should all be considering, guys. Stewardship means so much. And that word, like many other, has been tossed asunder out of your language. It's been thrown aside. It has been made not to matter. We're breaking the wheel, whether you like it or not. The wheel that grinds humanity into pieces will end, and humanity will be abundant again. I don't speak for, I speak for no one, and I speak for everyone. It's quite interesting. But you believing what you want to believe is what I believe in. Plain and simple.
I hope you like my drive. And fear this, we arrived alive, buzzing like a beehive, buzzing like a beehive. And now we on top, non-stop. D5, avalanche with that Q drop. Now it's our time like the Q clock. So tick-tock, 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 boom. And the last will be magical. Lock her up looking oh so probable. Feel that fact cause it's oh so logical. Last laugh, Gitmo, no comical. In the batter's box, white hats with the Red Sox, World Series win at all costs, gold champ champagne, lay your bottle pop, we about to make it, it's a celebration, Fed was so mistaken, raking in the bacon, what my mind is thinking, a piggy bank breaking, cause now we gonna take it, thank God for the saving, wow, now we on top, tippy top, fly Roth, fly and your whole freaky flock. Enjoy the show, let your corn pop. Let's rock, rolling Keystone to unlock. And now we on top, tippy top. I tip my cap at the Plan DC shock. Pain coming, swamp drain so unclogged. Celebrate one nation under God.
Anons, Patriots, worldwide, I want to thank you for coming to this movement. I want to thank you for making yourselves heard. I want to thank you for being you. And that is all. I want you to recognize, guys, that what you believe in freedom is far different than what they believe in destruction. Fear is their most prized possession, Anons. If they can make you afraid, they win. Your fear feeds them, Anons. There's a word out there, it's called loosh. L-O-O-S-H. You want to get red-pilled? Go read how they're really harvesting you. It's not as simple as you think, guys. I'm waking up everybody in every pod. I don't care. We're all going, guys. Anons unite worldwide. Stand tall. Do not be told no. And do not be bullied by a mob. Please. please, everyone out there, feel free to post in the comments below on the YouTube channel. If someone out there asks you a question, don't hesitate to help them out. You just might be able to. And if not, don't hesitate to send them to one of us, because we just might be able to. And that's exactly what we want to do. We are here to show that there is a clear line between the truth and the lie. And the lie is that they are the global elite, guys. The truth is that you are the global elite. Freedom, loving, light, Anons who say truth to power, who stand up every day to the worldwide control mechanism and say, no more! No more! Time is done. Your reign is over. The wheel is broken. And Anons build a new world. And I want to thank so much to all the other great citizen journalists out there: Jordan Say, The Praying Medic, Serial Brain, iPod, We the People Insider, Lisa May, Dustin Demos, JT Wild, X22 Report, Anon Decoder, Blessed to Teach, Lionel Media, Carly Bonet, coming in this morning on the Matrix Groove Hour. That was something spectacular. That lady is something else, and I'm going to have her on much, much more. Stormy, Patriot, Joe, We the People Inside, all of you guys out there make this happen, and none of it would happen without you. And with that, I want to tell you that I love you, Anons. I love everyone. I love my world, and I love the idea that we are going to take it back from those who would destroy it. And with that, I will see you guys Monday at 1 p.m. on the Matrix Groove Hour. Matrix, get better out there, buddy. I'll talk to you here in a little bit. He wasn't feeling good tonight, so I figured I would just go off on a tangent with you. Nothing more fun to be than this. This is a great time to be alive, guys. And until next time, good night. Much love.